Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today sitting down for our first big review of 2022. And as you see, there are a lot of game releases coming up quite shortly. So if you're new here and you're looking for game reviews, consider subscribing because we got some more cooking in the oven. Today we talk about a game that's first entry came out in 2015, and now 7 years later, after long being in development, we can talk about Dying Light 2. I've had this game on my Xbox Series X for over 2 weeks at this point in time, thus allowing me to complete the main story, a lot of side content, explore all this world had to offer, then let my experience marinate, digest it, soak it all in, and present my thoughts to you all in this video here today. That is not the standard review process, so a big shout out to Techland for that opportunity. I've put 50 plus hours into Dying Light 2, and I'm excited to share some thoughts today. So let's get it started with this. Dying Light 2 is one of the most refreshing open worlds I've explored in a long time. The parkour, combat, and plethora of activities that are unique to its world make it consistently fun to go back to. There's also a story that made me feel like the choices I was making were highly respected more than most big-budget RPGs in recent memory, and this added additional tension to the game. It is also a leap above what is presented in the first game, a complete far cry away from Dying Light 1 in the terms of narrative, and is much improved. However, if there's something I learned from my Cyberpunk 2077 review over a year ago, it's that it's not enough to have a section in your video solely dedicated to bugs, explaining everything you experience. It needs to be upfront and in the face of the audience if the bugs are that egregious. So let me say it here. Dying Light 2 is atrociously buggy. I played through 2 patches, one being its launch patch, and it's still in a rough technical state. I get caught in objects in the open world constantly. I'm spawning inside a wall after dying. Sometimes the dialogue will mute and auto skip, so I'll miss key story details. This one's pretty tragic, and that means I have to reload an old save. At times, my eardrums will get blown out unexpectedly. I don't know what the actual trigger of it is, with a loud buzzing sound that'll randomly play. Other times, quest waypoints will lead me to the wrong areas. Other times, quests will completely disappear. Sometimes, quests will just not be available at all or won't finish. Every play session with this game becomes a challenge of can the fun of the open world, can the tension of the storytelling overcome the technical frustrations I'm having? And this is coming from someone who's a big Bethesda Game Studios fan and has a lot of patience with bugs. Now, I've noted that the patches have gradually improved the game, and Techland is insisting more patches are on the way, but again, we are in a post-Cyberpunk 2077 world. I am not taking any chances. Despite all of this, though, I kept coming back to Dying Light 2. Why is that? I want to explain that here in this video today. So let's talk about it. I want to begin with the story. Dying Light 2 takes place 15 years after the fall, which is the event that led to effectively the post-apocalyptic scenario you're in now, where you fill the shoes of Aiden. He's searching for his sister, Mia, and you're uncovering this backstory of some mysterious experimentations performed on you that give you this supernatural ability to jump very high. It effectively explains why you're capable of such awesome gameplay mechanics. And your investigation will eventually lead you to Old Villador as you're trying to track down Dr. Waltz, the main antagonist of this game, who I thought was actually a pretty compelling one early on, but gradually fizzes out. This is one of the longer intros in gaming in recent memory for me, because it's like 3 hours in, you go, dude, just let me off the chain. Like, this is Dying Light 2, man. I want to run around and beat the hell out of zombies. Please let me do that for some time. But it's really geared towards storytelling in the early going, and it does take some time to truly pick up. But when it picks up, it gets really good. Perhaps the biggest compliment that I can pay this game is I felt tension in its storytelling despite the game being set in the open world full of distractions well worth your time. The characters are the heartbeat of the story. Sophie, Lawan, Hakon, Ader, Waltz, and many more. They're not only interesting characters, but they're core pieces to the factions that are in the world and thus make you care about the choices you make that will influence said factions. Character development is a superstar here. Some characters you meet in the early going don't seem like a big deal, and the game sort of pulls out an Uno reverse card and goes, aha, this is actually much more important than you thought it was, and it doesn't feel like a cheap trick. It's a very much improved writing effort from Techland here. And even though this game's gone through some significant rewrites that you can definitely feel in some instances, I think that the characters remained quite intact, their motivations, their purposes, and they are the driving force through all of this, which makes sense because the story is very, very choice driven. But it's also what's resting in the background and not in your face that really helps the storytelling here. The audio cues specifically I want to shout out, as they gradually add layers to particular narrative beats and gameplay moments that put a point of emphasis on it, that this is a big moment that's building up and building up. It's not just what people are saying, but what you're hearing that makes it all the more tense. There's also, and praise the Lord for this, no emphasis on collectathon storytelling. So you'll find notes and audio logs throughout the open world, but this is the first open world game in a long while that the need to know details are all tucked into the story in mandatory conversations, and not like, oh, well, this character's actually better than you thought. You just got to read the 3 notes that are hidden around the huge open world to find out their pure motivations. Like, no, that's not how it's got to be done. So again, a salute to going back to the basics here, because it works. We don't need collectathon storytelling to be our primary propellant for the narrative. It can be supplemental, which it absolutely is treated in this game. Almost unnecessary to even be in the game at all. In a pivot, in fact, they lean more on the side quests, because as you complete side quests, some characters will appear in the main story and also will play a factor into building up certain main story moments. So it's a different form of building the characters in the world around you, and it works. Ador and Lawan I can speak to specifically as characters that I was interested in, but after doing some personal side quests with them and making some choices that influenced them, there was a personal investment there. That's what choice is all about to me. It's about knowing the consequence that could be there if you screw this character over, and when you do make a choice that impacts them, delivering upon it. Now, choices come in 2 forms. I've talked a lot about story decisions, which lead to multiple endings, not only for the main story, but side quests themselves, which leans into a shocking amount of, at least feeling-wise, replayability based off how my playthrough was shaped with particular character appearances or removals. However, that's stuff that I do think needs to be left to be seen when a wider community gets access to this game and we're all making different choices and sharing clips and having a dialogue about it. But the choice that you truly can see that is very unique to this game, especially on a AAA level, is the world changes. So what'll happen are these gameplay moments where you have electric stations or water towers. In the case of water towers, they're these big platforming challenges. And when it comes to electric stations, you're taking cables and you're doing these unique puzzles to connect cables to generators and turn it on. Once you get either of these stations functioning, you now have a choice. Do I give it to the peacekeepers or do I give it to the survivors? And the choice you make here will impact the open world. I went the full survivor route. So when I was giving them electricity, water, suddenly launch pads were appearing around the open world that I could use to spring onto roofs. And if I didn't make that choice, that launch pad would have been there. Or one of the maxed out choices I can make as I continue to give them water and electricity is a 2-way zip line. So usually you could only go down a zip line. Now I can go up it and reach certain buildings that were typically a pain in the butt to reach. So it rewards you on a gameplay level, which is perhaps the most impactful form that a story can deliver to you. And it's constantly reminding you of the choices made. And it plays out very differently when it comes to the peacekeepers if you side with them, where they're more militaristic, combat focused, where you'll get like car bombs, for example. But do be aware of this. I have to call myself out in all fairness. I'm very biased towards games that give me choice. I love having agency over my experience. I love having the feeling like I'm in a sandbox and I'm moving around the chess pieces on a board. It's an amazing feeling for me personally. So I do gravitate towards these games, especially when they're done well. I love Wasteland 3. I love Divinity. And I love how this game handled choice, because I'll be talking about that for a while. Whether or not the narrative stuff plays out totally differently for everybody like it felt like it did, and it's not an illusion, hopefully, I can say for a fact that the gameplay experience is supported by the choices you make very well, and I hope other developers do see this is a great path forward to handling open world choices. On the note of the ending, we're not going to spoil anything, of course, but I wasn't a fan of certain aspects when this narrative tied up. There are some loose endings, some weak reasoning. It wasn't enough to disturb what I loved about the game, but I did find it a bit nagging, to say the least. There's also other nags, one that may sound familiar. Y'all know how I can't stand in Ubisoft games, especially Far Cry, the way that your character in first person, you can tell it's a dude standing there in a motion capture studio with a camera on his shoulder. I hate that shit. And this game is that for like 50,000 hours. And it just drives me up a wall. Like your character, instead of naturally looking at the scene before them, is like looking up at the crowd, staring awkwardly at people. I'm like, why the fuck are you looking at him, dude? Like, this is weird. This is not a first-person angle. It's someone with a camera showing parts of the game, and it just disconnects me from the person whose shoes I'm filling. I can't stand it. I wish there was a term for it, but y'all know what I mean. This game has that all over the place, and it bugs me a lot. I tried to keep disconnecting myself from it, but it just keeps coming back to you as you stand there motionless, like following people with your head. It's just, man. One big gripe with it for sure. And again, I do want to mention with the storytelling is there are certain times you can truly feel this game's been rewritten. We've had Chris Avellone leave the team. There were apparently reports of upper management changing things with the game constantly. So you can feel, and even sometimes know if you've been paying attention to the marketing, things have been moved around quite a bit here. But overall, I enjoyed the story a lot more than I expected. I thought the choices were badass, especially on a gameplay level. And so on a narrative front, thumbs up for me. But Dying Light is less defined by its story and more defined by its gameplay. Parkour is the calling card of this game. And much like I'd say for Spider-Man on PlayStation 4, point A to point B exploration is a complete blast here in Dying Light. You've got your paraglider, your grappling hook, you could wall run, swing from poles, zip lines, and plenty more tools and abilities allow this movement to feel both fluid and satisfying. But it's not the way that it plays also into the movement, but combat as well with parkour. And when it works, it works. Leaping off a stunned enemy's back and delivering one of gaming's most ruthless, lethal drop kicks is absolutely awesome. However, I did have some struggles from time to time because there was too much mapped to the RB button, so sometimes I'd want to dodge to the side or to backwards, and I would accidentally jump in midair. And so you will at times have these mixed inputs, and that can lead to you getting hit, getting your ass beat a little bit. But when it works and you're in that flow, you're in that rhythm, oh, brother, does it feel good. There are other combat mechanics like grappling enemies, so they'll come at you, you'll hold the X button, throw them on the floor, and then if you've unlocked the stomp ability, you can just jump on their face and squish their head like a bunch of plums. It's ridiculous. There's parrying, there's environmental interaction, so I could grapple someone and throw them into a spiked wall. It's awesome. There's power attacks and stamina management to boot amongst all of this in the combat system. So it's also, I know a lot of these mechanics are already in the first Dying Light, but coming back to it, I was like, man, this is just like so unique for the open world genre. Like, it's so much more fun and interactive than most first-person combat systems. I think of games that we play a lot here on the channel. I think of like Skyrim even, and I'm like, the evolution of first-person combat we've seen over time typically happens with guns, but on a melee level where this game's all about melee, you can use bow and arrow, but I'm always using melee, especially two-handed. There's a weight to it, a heft to it, and a fluidity to it that feels amazing when everything's clicking on all cylinders. And again, the tools that you can play with where you can unlock a sprinting drop kick. So when you're fighting someone on a rooftop, it's like, boom, see you later. He goes flying off the roof. Amazing feeling. Kind of like in Assassin's Creed Odyssey where you had the Spartan kick that you just send people flying. This game has that level of playing around with things in the environment and its systems. Like, you can find throwing spears and bottles on the side of the road, and you can use those as weapons, bricks for distractions. It's that cohesion of things you can do as the player, things that you can touch in the open world, and the movement system that all combine into one of gaming's most unique combat systems, especially from the first-person perspective. Another defining feature for Dying Light, and this one completely slipped my mind, I haven't played Dying Light 1 since the following came out in 2016, so it's been a while, but I forgot, nighttime is a legitimate threat in this game. Again, there's a maintained tension in the open world of Dying Light through both narrative and gameplay, and nighttime really punctuates that with its specific nighttime activities. Things like the GRE anomalies, these mini boss fights you can do to unlock inhibitors, which we'll talk about in a moment. GRE buildings, where you have to quietly crawl through infested buildings of infected, and if you disrupt one of them, I don't want to say it's game over, you can fight your way out, But you don't want to disturb that. You don't want to risk damaging your weapons with the durability, and there's just so many to fight through here. It's not ideal. So there are these tense stealth segments to metro stations, these fast travel points that you have to unlock, but you want to do them at nighttime because the infected come out at night. So those dark metro stations are now a little bit more empty, but you're on the clock. You got to get all of this done before the sun rises and the infected come back in again. And even some specific loot sources around the open world that are full of valuable resources that you can only get into around nighttime. You could go in during the daytime, but again, they'll be full of infected. When you combine that with when you get detected and chases activate and you're just running for your goddamn life, you're like, oh shit, and you're seeing zombies pop out of the glass, come up from the roof. It's a dynamic moment unlike anything else. And as you're seeing them ramp up, chase you more and more and more and more, oh my god. Any moment that you mess up when you're running, you like hit the wall by accident, you're like shit, like it just immediately becomes a butt clencher. And that's why stealth is so emphasized in nighttime. But what's also great is you don't have unlimited time at night, not only because the sun will rise again, but also because your character is infected. So you're managing your immunity, and there's a timer that's ticking down. So you need to sometimes get to UV light to restore that, or you can use, of course, consumables to restore this skull meter that's on the top of your screen at nighttime. But as it's gradually emptying, you're like, oh crap, do I have enough time to complete this activity? And you know, like, what if I start getting chased down? Can I take a consumable while I'm getting chased? Like, you don't want to take any risks while you're out there at nighttime. So again, tension is really the name of the game here. It works so well because of some phenomenal systems that have been developed for this game. Other side activities that you can participate in the open world are parkour and combat challenges, which are exactly what they sound like. Just running around the open world, doing fun stuff, flying around your paraglider, hitting waypoints. It's awesome. Combat challenges is what you'd think. You're just beating up zombies. There are also bandit camps. Yes, every open world just feels the need to have a bandit camp. I don't know, but because there's enough diversity here and the systems are so unique, I don't really mind sometimes interacting with the humans, because the battle between zombie and human is totally different. With the humans, you're parrying, you're trying to get creative with everything around you. With zombies, you can really just swing away. You can really swing away and get crazy, but you want to be careful of the variety of zombies that are going to be coming your way. Still, there are bandit camps you can complete. There are also windmills. On the note of first-person parkour, this game is also a first-person platformer, if you will, and these windmills emphasize that big time as your timing jumps just right, swinging from pole to pole, interacting with little levers to get things to move into just the right area. These first-person platforming puzzles are a sleeper hit in this game. I normally don't like puzzle solving in games, not because I don't want to use my brain, but I think they can just get frustrating quite easily and disrupt the rest of the experience because you get stuck. But with this game, it's really fun. I actually really enjoyed the constant platforming this game pushed you towards, because it's not only in the windmills, but those water stations I mentioned, you're really trying to figure your way out to the top. And it's not just a one-trick way of doing so, because the game gives you things like the grappling hook, which you can eventually, once you upgrade it, pull yourself to certain locations. So it's not as difficult. Or you can scale the wall, jump and do a 180 and grab onto a different ledge that you originally weren't anticipated to be doing unless your stamina was leveled up enough. So there's a lot of ways to solve these puzzles. You could jump off a really high building and fly to the top of a windmill with your paraglider. I love that there's no one-trick way of doing it, because it shows the flexibility of its parkour systems and lets the game systemically flex its muscles in turn. Speaking of paragliders, there's military airdrops. You find these, you get military tech inside them. We'll talk about what's so important about that in just a moment. And hey, of course, side quests. Yeah, it's kind of your standard open world affair, but the system design, again, I need to emphasize here, makes it unique. And the side quests specifically, I really dug, because they not only build up the main story in some instances, but there's some just fun whatever choices in there. And there's also some ridiculousness, some humor in there. It's a lot of variety, so you're always doing something different. And again, because no game outside of maybe Mirror's Edge is doing what Dying Light's doing, it feels so unique. And if you're like me, where you were away from Dying Light for a while, then coming back to it, it's so absurdly refreshing compared to everything else out there right now. As you complete all of these activities, you engage in battle, you're going to gain XP for both parkour and combat. And you'll unlock these skills with this fucking UI. Oh my god, it's not even that good. Destiny, I have no disrespect for Destiny. I appreciate what it did, but its UI can fuck off. Like, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough. Not every game needs to use the one cursor that just goes around. Okay, calm down, Matt. Calm down. Anyway, as you level up, you'll pick out skills for both your combat and your parkour. This is how you unlock some of the things I mentioned here, like the sprinting drop kick. This is how you unlock wall running. And these happen passively, like you're always gonna be in combat. You're always gonna be running around. You're gradually gaining XP for this. And if you're doing this at nighttime, you gain nighttime bonuses. So it's rewarding in that sense too, to unlock all these different skills. What you'll also get by completing a lot of these activities are inhibitors. Inhibitors allows you to upgrade your general health and your stamina. But there's also shops and blueprints that you can find, which plays into the game's crafting system. So I noticed with this game that the best weapons and armor I found were in shops. And I thought that was kind of interesting, like not even the quest rewards, but the shops. And I think it's because with the durability system, where things are breaking quite often, yes they are, and you can repair them by putting mods onto your weapons, but with that durability system, you need an easy access place for good weaponry, because you'll have a badass two-handed sword and go, oh, nothing's stopping this, and then suddenly it shatters and you go, well, I need something new that's that good. So while it's something that fights with the RPG core of me, which is like, you need to have amazing quest rewards, I'm happy they have them in the storefront if they're going to be breaking this often. Is it Breath of the Wild level? No, not even close. But if you don't manage and mod properly, these things can be a thing of the past in like a quick half hour. Now, these skills that you're going to be unlocking, the equipment you're going to be buying or looting, doesn't necessarily make a build per se, because the skills are not like this route that you're going to take specifically for your character progression. Like, you can unlock all of them. There is a bit of a pathway as you start to invest inhibitors in your health or your stamina. It'll start to unlock more of the tree, but you can fully complete both combat and parkour tree. And by the end of the story, when I was at 40 hours, I already had both of them mostly filled out. However, with the equipment, again, you see stat numbers like, oh, you get plus 10% parkour XP if you're wearing these shoes. A lot of it's in the background. Some of it's based off of like two-handed builds, where it does emphasize certain things and there is an impact there, but don't go in with this game having this RPG feeling on a gameplay level too. It's very much the Dying Light gameplay systems that you know and love, with some RPG-like content in there, and then the story with its choices is the most RPG thing you're gonna be seeing. And I think that's for the better. It doesn't need to get build crazy because the systems itself are very fun. So with the gameplay now out of the way, I think it's time we talk about the sound and then our conclusion. You know, as you gradually lay the layers of audio upon these big narrative beats, that's the biggest compliment I can give this sound, because it's a very synth-driven soundtrack. So it's like, and it's just building up and building up and building up. And so it makes things more intense, which is, I think, all you can really ask for in an open world story, where typically it's like, oh, as long as I'm out there helping Joe, Bob, Billy Boy, it doesn't matter what's happening to Ada over here. Who cares? Like, the story is effectively paused, but this game does a good job of providing tension, and the sound definitely plays a factor in that. On a voice level, there are some very unique voices in here, for better or for worse. I like that this game went off the board and didn't get 1,000,001 of the same voice actors and actresses that we've heard in all of our games for the last number of years. There are some unique voices here that, again, are good, because I like to hear new voices, and they personalize these characters much more than, like, say, another Robbie Damon role, another Troy Baker role, etc., you know, another Erica Lindbeck role. As much as I like these actors and actresses, I also want to encourage new voices to get parts in the industry. And this game does that, but sometimes you'll get some awkward sounding people, which again, I think does add some personality to it. But overall, sound experience was solid. I really dug this sneaky good soundtrack in this game. I'm going to be listening to it once it's released, so I'm excited about that. But the voice work was pretty solid across the board. With that, it brings us to our verdict here, our conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, with Dying Light 2, this is a game that I could easily wholeheartedly recommend to you if I knew personally your bug tolerance, right? As you can tell, I've pretty much ranted and raved throughout this whole long form review about a lot of things I really like with this game. But I can't sit here with a straight face and say, yeah, go out and buy it with the bugs I experienced. I know our tolerance levels differ, but even for me, there were sometimes I was like, man, enough. And I know they're saying it's going to get better. I want to believe that, and maybe in a pre-Cyberpunk world, I could have bought into the BS a little bit. But I can't comfortably sit here no matter how much I loved it. Like, I would happily put my $60 out there, but I can't comfortably sit here and go, you need to go and do that. I want to wait for a couple of patches where we know this is in a better technical state. When it is, though, buy this game. I think it's really good, really refreshing. I love the choices. I love the gameplay systems. I love the tension across the nighttime activities and the storytelling. The music kicks ass. I love the characters. I really, really, really like Dying Light 2. And again, the biggest compliment I can pay to this game is normally when the story wraps up and I'm done with the game and I felt like I've seen enough, I get to the script right away while the experience is digesting. But with this, I beat it. I came back again and back again and back again. That does not happen often if you've been watching me for a while. So Dying Light 2, it's legitimately kick ass when it's working. But these bugs need to be ironed out. When you start to see those patch reports come out and you're feeling comfortable with the technical state, pick it up. Whatever the price is, it is worth it, I feel, on a content level. So those are my thoughts on Dying Light 2 in our first review of 2022. Again, more on the way if you stay tuned through this whole review. Thank you so much. And with that, take great care of yourselves. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below, along with the Patreon. Do consider supporting that as it fuels all of the content we create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.